Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Mandy, and thank you for joining me today as I'm so privileged to be part of this collaboration with Teslima and Casey. They are both lovely artists and lovely friends, and I'm so grateful to get to collab with them. So what you're looking at here is this is a 12-inch round, and I have laid down some fireglass from Celestial Fireglass. I have the diamond reflective, and I have some of the copper, and I've also kind of sprinkled in some of the mirrored gold crushed glass from Michaels for some contrast. And I drizzled some epoxy over that just to kind of get it to stay in place. So I've already done that before I started this video. I'm working on a 12-inch cradled wood board. I've primed the top and the sides with flat white 2 times Rust-Oleum paint and primer spray paint, which is what I typically do with these wood boards to help protect the surface, as you know, wood is porous, and so sometimes with resin it'll bubble and stuff if you don't seal it. So the idea I had in mind when I used the copper glass is I wanted to use like an eggplant type purple color, and I wanted to use some copper. I wanted to use a floating copper pigment, and I wanted to use this fire opal color, which is the color I'm showing you right now, that I used in that little druzy. This is a leftover piece of MDF from the inside of a geode I cut. But that's also the color purple that we're going to use, so I wanted you to see that fire opal color. And the fire opal is from Colourarte. The eggplant color is from DMArt Bar. The fire opal, I kind of wanted to use it in my layers, but you'll find resin is difficult to control, and I end up having to kind of take some different directions to bring it back in. So hang with me and watch the journey. So that's the eggplant color. This is fire opal from Colourarte. This is actually a bling it color, so you can use this color in resin, which is gorgeous in resin, but it's a straight mica, so you can also use it in acrylic. This is an interference oyster satin, so this is going to be kind of a pearlescent, kind of a creamish color. And I really like this color a lot. This is also a bling it color, so this can also be used in resin or in acrylic. And don't forget, there's a 20% off discount code for Colourarte in the description box. Next up is Shooting Star. So you can save 20% using Mandy1120. So Shooting Star, similar to Milky Way, is a Shooting Star is just a larger particulate. It's a gorgeous, like super sparkly white color, and I love it in geodes. So what I just flashed there is Mehron Gold, which is my floating copper pigment that I want to kind of use for some line work. You'll find that I'm showing you there that I almost used that Pearl X pigment as like a lighter purple, but I just didn't have enough room on the board to do all that. So you'll find that my floating copper ends up being more like a main color, and that was not intended. I'm showing you there that I might use some a different color that I don't end up using. So the problem with geodes in me is I love to use all the things, and unless you're doing a really large surface, and even if you are, sometimes simple is best because you're going to get the most detail out of your like detail work instead of what you're doing in your color layering. So around my glass, I've got the interference oyster satin, and I'm trying to create a barrier. Ideally, I would normally want to do this and then let the resin dry so that I can keep the color out of my glass, because if you get your board covered with too much, it's going to seep into that layer anyway, and that's going to end up happening. Outside of that, I put that eggplant color. I'm a little out of frame here. And I put fire opal, a little bit more eggplant. And at that point, I'm just kind of layering these other colors. I realize at this point, I'm like, hey, I don't even have enough room to lay down my oyster interference, which is not something you want to miss. So I'm trying to put it wherever I can find a place. And so I end up putting it there. Oh, I'm actually meant the shooting star. I put the oyster interference in the middle. Shooting star is what I meant, the sparkly one. So I start to realize I have overcommitted myself here and I'm running out of room. So as you can see, I keep trying to fit things in, but what's happening is that resin has to go somewhere. And if your surface is not perfectly level, it's going to push what's on your surface off. So as it dries, you'll see that a lot of what I started with is going to change. And you can only so much control that with resin. So here is my floating copper. So far, I'm happy. When you have a floating pigment like this, when you torch it, sometimes you get some really cool effects. For one, it floats to the top, but it also creates some cool cells, interacts with what's to the left and to the right of it. So it's a lot of fun in geodes. So that's why I'm torching it a little bit more, is I want to see what it's going to do. But unfortunately, I have so much resin on the board that it's really spreading out more than it is remaining a detail. That's okay. You just got to learn to go with it, right? So yeah, at this point, I'm wanting to see the effects of it. So I'm kind of willing to take the chance. But I am starting to see that my purple is trying to get underneath the oyster interference, and I'm losing all control of my composition at this point. So after we let this layer dry, you'll see we're going to have to figure out, okay, are we going to be happy with it the way it is? Or are we going to come in and pour another layer? Are we going to try to fix it with the details? So yeah, I think I would enjoy doing, here's a close-up of the first layer. You can see that shooting star right there. It's so gorgeous. So you can kind of see what I was going for was this like deep purple with like beautiful copper contrast, and so what I had in my mind is not the way this is starting to go. I think this would be a really fun idea if I had a larger surface and I had more real estate to do all of the things I wanted to do in this painting. I think if I had to do it again, I think I would have to try to keep it super, super simple. And I think I would create a barrier around my glass that was a little bit more solid. So this is after it dries. So you can see my fire opal almost completely went off of both sides. So now the fire opal that I really wanted to kind of be the star of the show is like an afterthought. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I can either go in and add some fire opal, almost like a glitter line, or I can repour my layers. And at this point, I'm not sure that I want to repour the layers. So I'm over here pondering, what should we do? Now my floating pigment became like its own line. So do I like it? Do I not like it? So this is kind of the struggle with geodes is, resin, to a point, you can control resin, and then there's a point where it does what it's going to do. And you don't have a ton of control over it as it dries if you can't guarantee that it's perfectly level. And even if you can, it does what it wants. So at this point, I'm trying to kind of show you guys what I'm thinking. You know, I can add a glitter line right next to the copper. And by glitter line, I mean the fire opal. Or I can only add it in the, you know, in the darker parts of the painting, but like we only have it on the edges, which seems kind of lame. So what I end up doing is mixing up some of the fire opal in the resin and letting it sit to get really thick. I showed you guys what I was trying to do with that little piece. It honestly turned out awful. I'm gonna have to pour over that too. But when I cut out geodes with MDF, I keep the center that I cut out and make a little geode piece with it. So I haven't finished it, but I'm gonna have to fix that one because it's a druzy. So now I've loaded my fire opal that I've let thicken up into a syringe, and I need to buy some 10 ml syringes. These are 1 ml, and it takes a long time because I keep having to reload it. But that just helps you control the output. You know, I've also done this where I've put this in like a little sandwich bag and cut the corner off like a piping bag. But this works well, but I did have to let this sit for a long time because this is not glitter, this is mica. So it's going to try to spread out as it sits. So you want to get it good and thick. And here I just pinched my cup. So basically I'm going back in where it kind of shifted so much where it doesn't make sense, you know, because like there's all this white space. It's not really intentional at that point. And then when I poured this line, I was like, this looks weirder. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So the whole time I'm doing this, I'm like, I think I'm making it worse. But, you know, you're committed at this point. So I'm just trying to add in that fire opal and see if I can fix the composition. And the difficult part about some of this is sometimes you have an eye for where you want something to go. And you just don't know if it's going to work until you just lay it down. Like you have an idea, but you just don't know. Like, so when you lay it down, you're like, oh, that's okay. Or, oh my gosh, that's hideous. Like, you just don't know. So, and that's kind of what I'm doing here is like trying to fix where my line is too straight or whatever, because I'm not particularly thrilled with having put that next to the glass. So here I'm just taking a baby wipe and I have it over my finger and I'm kind of using it as an eraser to try to clean up the line where I want to see it cleaned up, just so you can understand what I'm doing. And so I do that here and then I go and add it back, whatever. It's amazing how obsessive we can become over something while we're working on it. But it is what it is. And then a final plug coat. Hey everyone, so here's the final result. I was really struggling with what to do since I lost so much of my color. So when I added these fire opal lines, I added them like glitter lines. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll use one of my paint pens. And I didn't have a copper one, so I really went back and forth. And one day I just broke out the gold one, and I'm really glad I did. So I didn't video it though, I'm sorry. But I basically went around this edge where I had added those copper lines. I went around the edges with the gold pen. I just outlined them as if they were the same color. And I really liked the way it added some dimension. I was on the fence about this one right here next to the glass, but I do like it. And so this turned out very differently than what I had intended, but I do really like it. And I do think the fire opal is the star of the show. So anyway, I am going to have this up in our Etsy store, so it'll be for sale. The sides are white, so I've taken the tape off, and it has a flood coat of resin on it. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's event. I believe that Taz is up next, so make sure you catch her video and Casey's as well. And if you're new to anyone's channel, please subscribe and let us know you're here. Thanks for watching and joining us today.